As we age, it's not uncommon for our bodies to change in some pretty big ways. We might notice that our joints ache a little more, or that our skin doesn't bounce back as quickly from a tough workout. But one of the most common and concerning changes that comes with aging is the shifting of our body composition. Muscle mass and strength tends to decrease, and fat mass tends to increase. The combination can be pretty dangerous too. Muscle loss is linked to an increased risk of falls, fractures, osteoporosis, and a higher mortality rate. And fat gain around the belly in particular has been associated with an increased risk of certain cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even cognitive decline. But while these age-related shifts are extremely common, that doesn't mean they're inevitable. Research is increasingly uncovering ways we can combat this process, and it turns out the key could be in our guts. Today, we'll talk about what research has found about the connection between gut health and aging, and how making a few simple changes to your diet can help you live longer by shifting the balance of bacteria inside your intestines. First, let's take a closer look at what's actually happening to our guts as we age. When you think of your gut, you might just picture a long tube that digests food and lets nutrients into your body. But in reality, it's also home to trillions of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microbes that make up your microbiome. Your gut microbiome plays a role in all sorts of bodily processes, including metabolism, immune function, and even behavior. Over the course of our lives, though, the makeup of our microbiome changes dramatically. A person's microbiome at birth is largely determined by the type of delivery they experience, whether they're born vaginally or via C-section. Babies born vaginally pick up microbes from their mother's vaginal canal during delivery, whereas those born via C-section get their first microbes from their skin and the environment around them. Either way, though, babies start off with more than 99% of the bacterial DNA in their guts coming from a single source themselves. That single source is what allows researchers to identify the core set of bacteria that all human guts have in common, including Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. Together, these bacteria help break down food particles, synthesize vitamins, and bolster the gut lining. From there, a baby's microbiome is shaped by a number of factors like diet, lifestyle, and antibiotic use, which continues to modify the types of microbes that call the gut home as we age. But overall, there seems to be a trend toward less diversity as we enter our twilight years. Studies of people over the age of 65 often find lower levels of Bacteroidetes and higher levels of Bacteroidetes of. This shift may play a role in some of the hallmarks of aging. For instance, one study in mice found that older animals had fewer antimicrobial peptides in their guts and were more susceptible to inflammatory bowel disease. That same study also reported an abundance of a bacterium called Enterococcus, which is normally kept in check by antimicrobial peptides in the guts of older mice. Since E. fecalus can cause inflammation, the researchers hypothesized that this microbe could be driving some of the age-related gut issues. To test this, they transferred fecal material from young mice to the guts of older mice and found that the older mice experienced a decrease in inflammation. While more research is needed to confirm exactly how microbial imbalances drive age-related inflammation, it does appear to be part of the problem. But the good news is that it also appears to be part of the solution. Introducing beneficial bacteria to the guts of older individuals may help alleviate some of these inflammatory issues. But how exactly do you go about doing that? Well, you could try fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT, where material from a healthy individual is transferred to someone who needs it. FMT has been used for decades to treat recurrent Clostridioides difficile infections and is being studied as a treatment for a host of other conditions from irritable bowel syndrome to inflammatory bowel disease. But if FMT sounds a little too intense, don't worry. There are other options to introduce beneficial bacteria to your gut without quite the same level of intimacy. You see, we regularly consume bacteria in foods like yogurt and fermented vegetables. These bacteria are often referred to as probiotics. Some well-studied probiotic strains include Lactobacillus reuteri, Bifidobacterium lactis, and Streptococcus thermophilus. Of these, L. reuteri and B. lactis seem to have the most promising results when it comes to alleviating age-related gut issues. In one randomized trial, older adults who took L. reuteri daily for 4 weeks experienced improvements in their gut health, including a reduction in intestinal permeability and improved digestion. Meanwhile, a different randomized trial involving 247 adults between the ages of 60 and 85 found that those who took B-lactis daily for 8 weeks had less bloating and abdominal pain than those who got a placebo. Of course, eating probiotic-rich foods is great and all, but there is one important thing to keep in mind. Not all bacteria survive the trip through your digestive system intact. So if you really want to ensure that your guts get the beneficial bacteria they need, you can supplement your diet with a probiotic. Just be sure to choose one that contains multiple strains of bacteria, as studies tend to see better results with diversity. Now that we know some of the ways that we can add beneficial bacteria to our guts, let's talk about how we can remove the harmful ones. One way we can do this is with prebiotics. Unlike probiotics, which are the actual bacteria, prebiotics are non-digestible food components that act as food for the bacteria already in our guts. Soluble fiber is a great example of a prebiotic. As it passes through your digestive tract, it gets partially broken down by enzymes, but the majority of it makes its way to your large intestine intact, where your gut bacteria feast on it. A study published in 2017 found that elderly participants who consumed prebiotics daily for 12 weeks had significantly more bifidobacteria in their guts than participants who did not consume prebiotics. And remember, more diversity is generally better. So now you're probably thinking, great, how do I eat more prebiotics? Well, luckily for us, nature has provided plenty of delicious options. One of the best sources of prebiotics is chicory root, which is often sold as a coffee substitute or supplement. Chicory root contains inulin, a type of soluble fiber that acts as a prebiotic. Meanwhile, bananas, onions, garlic, and asparagus contain fructans, another type of prebiotic, plus a variety of grains, legumes, and vegetables provide galactual isococcus, or GOS. So if you want to ensure that your gut bacteria are getting the fuel they need, you can try adding some chicory root to your morning beverage, or sneak in some extra onions to your next stir-fry. Finally, there's one last thing we can do to influence the makeup of our gut microbiome: dietary components called postbiotics. Unlike prebiotics and probiotics, postbiotics aren't bacteria themselves, but rather molecules produced by bacteria in our guts. Postbiotics have been shown to have all sorts of beneficial effects on our health. For instance, one study found that postbiotics helped improve the gut lining and reduce inflammation in mice. And another showed that postbiotics could help prevent obesity and diabetes in mice that were fed a high-fat diet. What's more, scientists are beginning to learn that postbiotics can be powerful signaling molecules that communicate with organs all over the body. Postbiotics produced by your gut bacteria may help protect your brain from damage and even help regulate your sleep cycles. So how can you boost your intake of postbiotics? Unfortunately, this is a bit trickier than simply eating more prebiotics or probiotics, because postbiotics are only produced by bacteria already in your gut. But there are ways to encourage the growth of bacteria that produce beneficial postbiotics. But for now, introducing beneficial bacteria to your gut appears to be the best way to ensure that you're getting the full range of postbiotics that you need. At the end of the day, improving gut health as we age doesn't have to be complicated. All it takes is a little know-how and the willingness to make a few simple changes to your diet. With so much evidence linking gut health to longevity, it might be worth looking into how you can add more prebiotics, probiotics, or postbiotics to your diet. You might just find that better gut health isn't just about extending your lifespan, but improving your health span as well.